Roshikal, मेरा तो unmute है ना?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How are you?
So we will be starting at 10, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'm just checking the sharing of the PPT. Just
Okay.
my colleague is doing it.
Okay.
सबने ट्राई कर लिया शेयरिंग सबने
नहीं अभी जो सर ने किया था शेयर अभी सुरेंद्र सिंह जी ने कर सुरेंद्र सिंह जी ने आपने पीपीटी शेयरिंग कर चेक कर लीजिए सुरेंद्र सिंह जी
शेयर
Okay.
चलो
ओके सर आई एम डूइंग दैट स्क्रीन on application ये
Okay.
स्कूल में तक से रहता था पहले करा लेना चाहिए
ಇದು share ಮಾಡಿ screen
application
वो पॉइंट सही है शेयरिंग
ಕ್ಲಿಕ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಶೇರ್
Okay. Right.
ಶೇರ್
Okay. ಆರಂಭ कर ಇರ್ಲಿ
अभी जोसेफ सर का पीपीटी सेल हुआ था
सबका करना चाहिए था ना उस टाइम
अभी लेवल पे
लेट हटा देते हैं उनको फोन करना
नहीं अभी स्टार्ट मत कराओ डीटीएच पे करा दिया क्या क्यों कराया मैंने आपको बोला पहले अंदर तो रेडी कर
श्रीकांत जी आपका पीपीटी शेयर चेक हो गया अब इसे हटा लें
हाँ सर हाँ चेक हो गया
सुरेंद्र सिंह
ठीक है सुरेंद्र सर का भी हो गया
हो गया चल
सर हम लोग अंदर से इशारा कर देंगे ऐसे शुरू करना है
ठीक है
आप इशारा करिएगा
नवीन शेयर मॉडल
देखो इशारा करेंगे मुझे
ठीक है 5 seconds. Studio ready 5 seconds.
नमस्कार आप सभी को and we all know that we are here logged in for the Shikshak Parv. As you all know that under the aegis of Ministry of Education, we are celebrating Shikshak Parv, wherein we are conducting everyday sessions on different topics, and we are in a way disseminating the points or the elements which are there in the National Education Policy 2020, and we are connected through this medium to teachers, practitioners, state functionaries, planners, senior authorities from the state governments and central government, different ministries, and of course the teachers, students, and parents also. So we all different stakeholders are connected through this medium in this section one. And the topic today that we are going to discuss and deliberate is very important. It is on the assessment reforms in the National Education Policy 2020. You all know that in this National Education Policy, assessment has been brought to the central stage of all teaching learning process. In fact, it was earlier also, we all know. But the point is that it has been emphasized quite extensively and quite emphatically in this National Education Policy. And friends, only a few days ago, I was just going through, turning through the pages of the Financial Express, and I found that there was a writing from a senior officials from international organization that move to prioritize assessment can make India globally competitive. We all know that we are there we have a global footprints in the area of education, and children from India are across the world. They are making their footprints. But even if we want to see our tomorrow better than today, so surely we have to deliberate a lot and think about contemplate about how assessment reform can be brought into in the classroom settings, among the teachers and among the parents, and all the nuances of assessment reform should be there in the mind of one and all. So I just want to say that there are a few points that we have to keep in mind. And these are the pointers just I want to bring before you all. We have we have to provide the equitable and vibrant knowledge society in this country, and then there are many new initiatives also. For example, foundational literacy and numeracy, and therein we have to see that the children at the foundational stage are achieving the learning outcome of which are there at their stage. For example, they are having the number sense or not, how they are able to use the numbers in their daily life. They have to connect their surroundings with their everyday teaching learning process. So these points are there. So with all these things, I just want to introduce. First of all, I would introduce the panelists today, and then the flow of the program would be like this, that I will be giving a small presentation, and then I will be requesting the panelists to give their views through their presentation, and then we'll be holding the question answer sessions, some discussions. So first of all, I would like to introduce here Professor Y. Srikanth. Professor Y. Srikanth is a professor in education, as he is a principal of Regional Institute of Education, Mysuru, a constituent of NCRT. And he has been to different departments, institution. He was with the Department of Educational Measurement and Evaluation. He was with the Department of Secondary Education at NCRT. And he was with the National Institute of Educational Policy and Administration also. He was an associate professor there. And he is a widely published person in national and international journals and peer-reviewed journals, and he is on the editorial board of many well-known international journals also, like Curriculum Journal of UK and the Professional Geographers Journal of USA, Journal of Educational Issues, and many more. These are just to name a few. And he is a very well-known person in the area of assessment, and he thinks about assessment. He very innovatively thinks about assessment. And one point I just want to make here, that the National Achievement Survey 2017, 2017 also saw the leadership of Professor Srikanth for some time, because he was at that moment head of Educational Survey Division in NCRT. So I welcome you, Professor Srikanth, here
Thank
to
you.
this
Thank you.
discussion. And we have with us the next panelist, Dr. Joseph Emmanuel. He is Director Academic with Central Board of Secondary Education. And he is a National Program Manager for the PISA program for International School Assessment. And you all know that the government is planning to join the PISA in the next round. And he has been Secretary, Central Board of Secondary Education. He was Regional Director also at the Central Board of Secondary Education. He was Officer on Special Duty for the medical examination. You all know that medical examination was a big exercise that was conducted by Central Board of Secondary Education. And most importantly, he has just undertaken many pivotal role in the in bringing reforms at the Central Board of Secondary Education level. And he has just tried to connect information and communicate technology for the benefit of the examinations and many other activities of the Central Board of Secondary Education. And he was instrumental in establishing the CBSE Center of Excellence this sector of excellence are there for the capacity building programs for teachers and other stakeholders, and he has led to the development of many manual and handbooks for different stakeholders as a director, academic central board of secondary education. So I welcome here Dr. Joseph to this discussion, and we are very happy to have you here. And the next panelist is a very important person for this discussion today. He is a practitioner from the field, and he is Sri Surendra Singh, a teacher from Municipal Corporation Primary School, and he is with the school system since 1999. He belongs to Sonipat, Haryana. And I would like to just tell that what is his motto that defines him. He says that I treat every student as a book. He says that I treat every student as a book. In a way that defines Sri Surendra Singh ji. And a few more things I just want to tell about him. That this is Municipal Corporation Primary School, which is situated at the periphery of Outer Delhi, and they are working in that school. He has seen about 320 students who have got meritorious scholarship, and he has seen about 166 students who have seen to the ladder of state talent level, and about 7 students of his school have gone to the Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya. And he says very proudly that about 180 students have got prizes in different competitions at the state level, district level. So I feel that we have a very good practitioner with us. He is working with the government school system, and he will also be telling us how he sees the reforms in National Education Policy 2020 pertaining to assessment, and what his experience says. Then we can take along all the reforms. So, with this introduction of the panelist, I would just be sharing a few slides on the reforms, and then we will be requesting. I will be first requesting Professor Shrikant to give his presentation. But before that, a few things that I want to say about the National Education Policy 2020 assessment reforms. So we all know, as I was discussing, that a lot of reform elements are there, and we also know that we have a long history also of the reforms in the country. In a way, we know the ancient time where we had the Gurukul system, where the oral recitation and informal observation was a method which was used for assessing the progress in the learning of students. And to the present level, where we are positing that all the teaching learning process has to keep the learning outcome, the competency in the children to the fore of all teaching learning process. So we have seen a long journey of assessment. And now I would just like to place here that this long journey has also seen mainly education commissions, and you see that there has been a change in the focus also, and the different education commission have emphasized the need for revamping students assessing through examination for bringing quality and confidence in the system of education. The most important thing is to bringing quality and confidence in the system of education. And we had the National Policy on Education 1968, then 86. There also, you see, the 68 said about the shift in focus. The shift in focus was from evaluation to the certification, from evaluation and certification to the improvement in learning. So learning was an important target which was there in the 1968 also. And then National Policy Education 1986, that also said that we should be trying to remove the excessive element of chance in the examination, and children should be away from fear of exam. And then the next slide simply says that the national curriculum frameworks also mentioned about the examination reform very emphatically, and the learning and assessment for qualitative improvement was the target that national curriculum frameworks also, the 1975, 1988 and 2000 emphasized above. So likewise, we see that different commissions and the national curriculum frameworks have emphasized about the assessment as an important part of teaching learning. And the journey of students' assessment, you see this slide simply wants to say that this long journey from oral testing, written testing, public examination, internal and external evaluation to competency-based assessment, these are all attempts to shift from content-based to the competency-based. So in this, we see that we are here with a long exercise and journey, contemplation, evolution in the area of assessment. And now see the new education, National Education Policy 2020, which has emphasized a lot, I would say, the whole policy at different places, in different paragraphs, different chapters, emphasizes that assessment is an important part. So the transformation in assessment, what we require now is for optimizing learning and development of all students, we have to keep in our target each and every child in the class. We have to see that every child has enormous ability, every child has talent. We have to see that how we are optimizing the learning and development of each and every child. And this is about the feature of assessment. And I would be just moving ahead because these things will be in detail discussed by the speakers also. And the culture of assessment has also to change, that policy says very emphatically. And we all know that the culture of assessment in the school system among the different stakeholders have to change. And now we come to this point and this slide, which is very, very important. You see, this says that we have to undertake 360-degree assessment. Means we have to see that the child in the school system develops its cognitive as well as psychomotor as well as affective domains. So 360 degree is very important. It will include self-assessment. It will include peer assessment, where within a group of child, one child is assessing his or her friend, and that the friend is assessing herself or himself on different piece of work, and through this the collaboration and communication, all these traits are being, all these skills are being assessed. So self-assessment, peer assessment, and this will include assessment by parents, assessment by teachers. So this 360 degrees assessment, which will be a part and parcel of the school-based assessment, is a very important point that has come up in this policy. And the speakers will be discussing in detail about this. And herein it is very important that we be very clear that the progress of the child has to be assessed on the basis of the inquiry that the child is making, or the learning has to be inquiries based, and the quizzes and other works or tasks that is given to the child or a group of children, that is to be made a part and parcel of our day-to-day teaching learning process and assessment. And you see, this slide says briefly about the public examination, and we all know that public examination in the form of board examination at secondary and higher secondary stage has been, you see, a big stress on the children, and they take away a lot of time of the child. And we all know that in a way we are seeing the pressure of the coaching, pressure of the parents. So we have to just improve upon this. We have to go further, and we have to see that how the competency in the child is assessed during the teaching learning, all through the semester, on the year, academic session, and at the end of the session. So this again is a slide about the public examination, and we will be listening to Dr. Joseph from the CBSE, and he will be also explaining much what they feel as Central Board of Secondary Education about the public examination. Now, you see, this is about how we have to reform the examination from grade 9 to 12, including board examination. So here in a few points, board examination will be made easier, as they will be testing primarily core competencies and capabilities, and then visible model to be explored, that whether it should be modular or semester. Policy discusses about that also. And a very important point that policy has given to us, that there will be an agency named Parak that would be there guiding the different boards and conducting large-scale assessment surveys to seeing the progress of children learning using artificial intelligence and all these ICT tools. And these are there. And then the teachers to be prepared for all this reform. That is a very important point which policy says to us, and policy gives us a target that by the year 22-23, the assessment will be in its reformed form. So these are a few points about reforming examination at the secondary stage, 9 to 12, which is now there in the policy, we know. And the examination for grade 2 8, here the key stage assessment, as we know that there will be an agency, Parak, and class 3 and class 5 and class 8, there will be assessment which will be seeing the children achievement of critical learning outcomes, and how the children are flaring in their critical thinking, creativity. All these points will be assessed through this large-scale assessment survey. And more emphasis is there in the policy, and we all have to keep in mind that we have to move away from the rote memorization. So these are the points which are there for the elementary stage. The next slide says about, this is about the Parak. Parak is Parak, as the name suggests, performance assessment, review, and analysis of knowledge for holistic development of child. So Parak will be an entity which will be guiding the boards, the state boards, and in the assessment reform, and what could be the criteria and framework for assessment in the days to come. So this agency would be there, and now we all know that there would be a national testing agency. The purpose is very clear, that we all know as parents also, that our children have to appear for different examination, for entrance and for job, and for different purposes we are having different examination by different agency. So the national testing agency would be there in place, and is there in place rather, I should say, and that would be conducting high quality common aptitude test, and that will be serving as a premier and expert autonomous testing organization, and even that will be also conducting examination for entrance in the university admissions, and for different purposes. And this agency will be a set of different experts and different testing experts, and the main purpose or the main benefit of this national testing agency would be that child will not be loaded, or even the students at after class 12, they will not be loaded for different examination at different point of time, and there will be in a way standardized testing for entrance and for many other purposes. So likewise, we are moving to the next point, where very important aspect that has been touched upon by this national education policy is about gifted children, about talented children. And you know that the policy mentioned about the children with singular interest, and how to nurture their interest by different options, clubs, and different level competitions, promotions of their interests, and nurturing their interests. So this is also a very vital aspect that has been brought into this national education policy, and these are the elements. Now we come to the most important point, that is about the implementation. So we all know that implementation is an important part of this whole discussion, or what is there in the national education policy. And today discussion also will be an important time to listen to you all expert and the practitioner from the field about the implementation, and how implementation can be made more effective, so that the aspirations of this big population, and we know about 260 million children are there in the school system, and their aspirations and the aspirations of their parents, teachers, and the school system can be met. So in this way, I am at the end, and now I will be requesting Professor Y. Shikrant that the backdrop that we have just seen, how he sees that the assessment reform can be taken up and can be put forth before this country. So I request Professor Y. Shikrant, please.
Good morning, everybody. Namaskar. Thank you, sir, for the wonderful introduction and also introducing about the topic. I'm sharing the slideshow. Is it visible? Hello. Is the slideshow visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah. So when it comes to assessment, especially the new education policy, has discussed in detail about how to go about with the assessment at school level and at higher education. Way back in 1948, the Radhakrishnan Commission had recommended that if there is one thing to be reformed in the educational system, it is the examination. We know that examinations are very critical, and we have, over the period of time, moved from examination to evaluation, evaluation to assessment. Now we are focusing on assessment, and I'll be largely discussing about assessment rather than merely examination, which is conducted at the end of the academic session. When it comes to reforming students' assessment, there are many aspects which need to be taken care if we want to systematically improve the quality of the students' performance in the school education. Basically, we all are familiar with the assessment that is being conducted right now. But if at all learning has to improve significantly, it needs more and more participation of the students. We all know that, especially the slide I'm showing, it indicates that the average retention rate after 24 hours, which will be much more if the students are able to teach, practice by doing, discussing among themselves rather than merely listening to lecture. So this is very critical, and this particular bit of research indicates that students' active involvement is very critical for improvement in the learners' abilities. When it comes to the assessment, the new education policy, it also talks about 360-degree assessment. So why this 360-degree assessment and how it can be conducted? Right now, we in India are conducting different kinds of assessment at different levels, which certainly is already a step in the right direction to provide 360-degree assessment. Let me just explain about that. We are all familiar with the fact that the national achievement surveys or state level achievement surveys are conducted, which provide a systemic inputs in terms of how systems are performing, supporting students in terms of their performance. So this is not about individual student or school, but about the system, how the system is helping, and especially where the curriculum needs to improve, how the curriculum needs to be transacted. So based on the findings of these surveys, we will be in a position to understand how the system can support. This is very critical. This is one way of conducting the assessment. The other way of conducting the assessment is largely through boards. Boards conduct examination, and also they conduct summative and formative assessments. We are all familiar that these assessments are also very important in terms of benchmarking the students' performance. Then comes the formative assessment. This is, to a large extent, is the most neglected aspect related to assessment. The reason, because formative assessment has to happen in the direction in which it is happening all over the world. It has to take into consideration different dimensions of the learners, different tools and techniques have to be utilized to assess their performance rather than seeing their performance only through paper pencil test or pen paper test. Let me explain about that a little in little detail at a later stage. So first of all, let me pose some challenges that we have in the assessment. Especially, we are all familiar with the assessment, which is largely examination-centered teaching and learning. We all know that when there are board examinations, students want to study. In fact, 3 months before the examinations, they gear up for the preparation to board examinations. And sometimes it happens much before these days. The reason, because board examinations, they cause a lot of stress to students. They want to prepare thoroughly and score marks. So for these reasons, the board examinations have become very central part of the educational teaching and learning. Then we focus on cognitive aspects. We know that there are various dimensions which need to be taken into consideration. It is not only the cognition, but it is also the affective and psychomotor domains, such as the skills, the abilities, attitudes, interests, values. All these are very critical if we want to develop the student's personality in an all-round manner. So then comes this textbook-centered evaluation. We know that textbooks are very important, especially if we see countries like in many of the African countries, the textbooks are also not available. So they do not know what to learn and what not to learn. I do not undermine the importance of textbooks in that context. What I'm trying to say is that textbooks are important, but they are not everything. Apart from the textbooks, there are various other resources which the student should be in a position to utilize in order to learn better. And when it comes to examination and assessment, largely assessment of creative aspects, creative work of the children is neglected because stereotypically what is expected from the students through textbooks in the form of examinations, that is only assessed, leaving a very negligible scope for testing unique abilities of the students, which the new education policy also has highlighted. And when it comes to multiple choice questions, we know that their number is growing these days in the examinations and assessments, because sometimes teachers feel that it is convenient to set the multiple Am I audible? Hello?
Yeah.
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, please. Then the creative aspects have to be emphasized because they are very critical in learning, because the unique learning abilities are very important, and the student should be given opportunity to blossom, and that can only happen when we give them ample opportunities for improving their unique abilities. Then when it comes to use of multiple choice questions, we know that it is often recklessly used, keeping one key and several distractors, which sometimes do not relate with the key. So there are different problems with regard to multiple setting of multiple choice questions. And as a result of that, again, the abilities, true abilities of the students, we are not able to identify them. Then when it comes to CCE, it is often considered as synonymous to examination. And in fact, CCE is much broader a term rather than examination. We know that records are very important, especially when it comes to school-based assessment or CCE that we are talking about. But these records should not be so burdensome that they often obstruct the process of teaching and learning. So the records should help in improving the performance of the student. Students, the record should be maintained to such an optimal level which will be useful. They should not take more time than teaching, and are important, but they are not more important than the learning. And only marks do not indicate learning, because there was clearly through research it is found out that when students are given qualitative feedback, they will be in a position to improve better than when they are given merely numerical or alphanumerical scores or grades, which do not indicate what to expect from the students, where they have gone wrong, how to improve, etc. So all that is possible only when we are in a position to give them a qualitative feedback. Then there are certain misconceived notions with regard to assessment. We know that continuous is not the same as periodic. Continuous means ongoing assessment, which sometimes can be formal, informal, which can be a feedback to the students. And the assessment has to be integrated with teaching and learning, and that is how we can call that as continuous. And periodic assessment is again a form of summative assessment, and it is not a continuous assessment. The comprehensiveness is also undermined because of the fact that we are not in a position to utilize different tools and techniques, which we have to do if we have to improve the performance of the students. Like a soldier who has different weapons to handle the enemy, the teacher and the students, they should have different tools and techniques to enable, decipher what exactly the student understands, and how the student understands, and how we can improve the performance of the students, etc. And evaluation is considered synonymous with measurement, in the sense we want measurement as accurate as it is being perceived in the space technology, etc. The same kind of accuracy is not required. We, in fact, should provide opportunities
Professor Shrikant, please unmute yourself. Professor Shrikant, please. Yeah.
Am I not audible?
Now you are audible. Please keep yourself unmuted. Mr. Shrikant, we are not able to hear you.
Yes, sir. Okay. So,
Shrikant. Mr. Shrikant.
hello.
Yeah. You have slides to go, I guess. We could not hear you in between.
Yes.
There is some bandwidth issue, I guess. So, Shrikant. Hello. Professor Shrikant, दूसरे connect कर दो. Yeah. So, Professor Shrikant, I think we are not able to connect. So, hello. Hello.
Sir, he has been disconnected,
Yeah.
sir.
So,
I think there is some.
yeah.
I think we can go to the next speaker.
Yeah.
And then we can come back to him again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, we will be listening to Professor Shrikant.
Shrikant ji is back.
Hello. Professor Shrikant, we were disconnected. You have to complete?
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So, assessment for learning and assessment as learning have been emphasized by the new education policy, and these are very critical apart from assessment of learning, about which we have been talking extensively, very extensively. And especially when it comes to the conduct of assessment for learning and assessment as learning, the schools have to be given a little more autonomy to facilitate this. Apart from that, assessment of schools, the assessment which is conducted by the schools and teachers at the school level, along with the help of students, that is very critical. So let me tell you about a few points related to the importance of formative assessment. For the formative assessment facilitates in integration of teaching and learning. Along with the assessment, it will really provide opportunities for students. There has to be less burden on recording and reporting, and it has to be child-centered. Child-centered does not mean that the same kind of activities are given to all the students all the time. It has to be based on their abilities, the learning outcomes that have been defined at different levels, and it should focus on competencies. Competencies are those abilities, cluster of abilities, related abilities, along with commitment and knowledge, skills, etc., to enable a person to act effectively in a situation. So we need to focus on competencies, and the learning, especially in the schools, has to happen in a non-threatening, stress-free, and through enhanced mode of participation. So certainly when we give these opportunities, the self-assessment and the peer assessment as part of 360-degree assessment, so it will give plenty of opportunities for students to improve their performance. Apart from that, reposing faith in teachers and students is also very important. We know that learning assessment of learning is benchmarking, but as opposed to that, assessment for learning involves students in reflection, review and to modify their own teaching learning strategies, and assessment as learning involves the students themselves to assess their work and the work of the peers, etc. So this way, the 360-degree assessment provides opportunities for students to be assessed by different stakeholders and also through different tools and techniques, which needs to be much more effective. So the 360-degree assessment does not exclude the summative assessment. It also includes formative assessment, but also the assessment by the students themselves. Basically, when we talk about assessment, we have to link assessment with curriculum, which NCERT has already done by defining the learning outcomes, and also the accountability of the teachers will be fixed through this way, because the teachers will have to now focus on what to expect from the students, and this can be seen by different stakeholders, whether these learning outcomes have been realized or not. Earlier, the focus was on knowing more and more in the form of, let us say, if a student knew up to 500 or 1000, he was considered bright. Now, as opposed to that, we are focusing on learning about the relationship of numbers, even in a small range as small as 1 to 20. So this is very critical. And also, the learning outcomes do not simply focus on the cognitive aspects, but also the touch, the flavor that one can sense, all that. So they are emphasized in the learning outcomes, and this way it will help. When it comes to school-based assessment, we have to, like I've been pointing out, we have to use different strategies like rating scales, checklists, observation, portfolio, anecdotal records. So there are various resources. In fact, in NISTA, we are in detail discussing about these aspects. So they have to be utilized to make assessment much more effective. And one of the important aspects is rubrics. The students, the teachers and students should be able to develop a systematic scoring guidelines or criteria for assessing themselves. This can be for a piece of essay or an art or a dance form or anything like that. The students and teachers collaboratively can prepare this criteria. like I'm giving in this example, how through a descriptor, criterion, level of performance, and score. So through all these aspects, assessment can be done, and in this active participation of students can be seen. So this way, if we are able to utilize different tools and techniques and emphasize on teachers' autonomy and also focus on qualitative feedback, certainly there will be ample scope for improving the quality of assessment, which in turn will help in improving the performance of students at different stages of school education. Thank you very much for your patience.
Oh, so thank you, Professor Shrikant, and it was a nice presentation. There was a few technical glitches in between, but in the form of question answer later on at the end, we will be dwelling upon a few points. But till then, I request now Dr. Joseph Emmanuel from CBSE, Director Academic, to kindly please give his Dr. Joseph. Dr. Joseph, I will be listening to you now. Dr. Joseph, please unmute yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Secretary School Education, Madam Anita Karwal, Chairman CBSE, Mr. Manoj Ahuja, Director NCRT, Professor Rishikesh Senapati, all the senior officers in the Ministry of Education and its autonomous bodies, leading educationists, principals, teachers, and all those who are listening me on this platform. Thank you very much for this great opportunity to share the platform with eminent educationists, Professor Sivastu and Professor Shrikant and Sunita Singh ji. And I will be focusing on the plan of action from the point of view of an implementing organization. The education policy has given new hope for the entire teaching community and the student community of this nation. And this pragmatic policy is focusing on equity, excellence, as well as inclusion of teaching learning process of our country. It aims at developing the nation through development of individuals. The key competencies, skill sets of an individual or a child is developed so that he will be able to take part in nation making, nation building, and to contribute for the development of the nation. That is the idea. So the education system, the process that aims to recognize, identify, and foster the unique capabilities of each student by sensitizing teachers and parents to promote each student's holistic development in both academic and non-academic spheres is one of the core focus area of the new policy. So in this process, curriculum, pedagogy, assessment, and creating an enabling environment of teaching learning process all are equally important, and how the assessment is used for the development of the child is what we are going to discuss now. If you please respond, are you able to see my presentation? Can you see the presentation?
The presentation, yes, it is visible. We are on the title slide.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the NEP is envisions for incorporation of specific sets of knowledge, skill, and values across domains at each stage of learning. So this clearly focusing on shifting away from the bookish knowledge to competency-based education. The move towards real understanding and learning of the topic rather than rather than understanding something without understanding the concept and the ability to apply it in the real life. So the whole objective is to create holistic and well-rounded individuals equipped with the key 21st century skills. That is the critical thinking, problem solving, communication, collaboration, and all those skill sets that needs an individual to lead a successful life in the 21st century needs to be acquired through the education. So our objective is not teaching to test, but teaching for life. That is the primary focus uh, in the of assessment in the new policy. So how the transformation will happen in the assessment process? Let us see. The new policy emissions for a adaptive or a formative testing for all students to take school examination in grade 3, 5, and 8, which will test achievement of basic learning outcomes and application of knowledge in real life situation. So the process of identifying the skill set and values and the knowledge comes from the early years of learning. That and all these learning will be assessed in different individuals of class 3, 5, and 8. And CBSE will also be joining in the process by developing appropriate assessment tools and assessment mechanism for for helping the child to learn well at these ages, at these classes also. Board examinations for grade 10, 12 will be made easier. That is another major recommendation of the policy. And it will test core capacities and competencies of the learner. Again, viable models of board exams, such as annual, semester, modular to be developed, offering all subjects at 2 levels, 2 parts exams or objective type, descriptive type questions to be administered in the examination. CBSE is in the process of simplifying its examination process, and CBSE has already included many patterns of questions to move away from the rote learning and also to assess the skill set and competencies of students. So in the process, a regular feedback mechanism for the teacher and parent and the child himself is required. So NEP envisions development of a holistic progress card that gives 360-degree analysis of the child's learning process. It will be multi-dimensional and it will reflect the progress and uniqueness of each learner in the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains. So, all-round development and developing a child as a well-rounded citizen. That is the purpose of this feedback mechanism as well as assessment mechanism. So to achieve this target, as Professor Srihant has very rightly said, capacity building of teachers are very, very essential. The teachers to be prepared for a transformation in the assessment system by 20 to 23 academic session, so that the vision of the new policy can be implemented on ground. The National Assessment Center, PARET, is another vision of this policy. It is going to set standards for school education and standards for examining conducting bodies, the boards of assessment. So every board in this country will follow a common quality norms and standard parameters, so that every child who is passing through the examination process of different boards in this country will have common quality standards, and abilities and skill set will be assessed, can be assessed with a certain common parameters and attributes. So let us see how the present day examination of different boards are working. So the board examinations are currently heavy loaded and lot of emphasis on attaining marks in the final examination. So this is one of the drawback of the present evaluation system, and it promotes a lot of rote learning. So the culture of rote learning to competency based education, the ability, developing of ability of the child to apply acquired knowledge in the real life, and connect real life with the knowledge. That should be the way we need to move forward. That is what the NEP is envisioned for. So, how to transform the assessment practices to develop these key competencies and skill sets? What CBSE has done is CBSE has developed lot of scope for internal assessment in all subjects and given weightage of this internal assessments in the board examination. Minimum 20% weightage has been given to internal assessment across all subjects of class 10 and 12. And these internal assessment grades are considered for computing the results. So, in a way, the process of transformation as envisioned in the NEP has been begun in CBSE by putting lot of emphasis on the internal assessment. So again, the transformation has also happening in the board examinations by including different sets of questions from objective type questions, multiple choice questions, source based and case based questions, etc. that focuses on higher level competencies beyond recall and understanding. So the case-based questions necessarily test the competencies and skill set of students, how well prepared they are to apply the acquired knowledge in a real life unfamiliar situation. So connecting learning with the practical life is what is assessed to this kind of questions. So providing course to the need of the learner. NEP has envisioned for providing two-level courses and for passing the board examination or the course, a multiple set of courses at standard level and higher level can be combined. This is one of the recommendation of the new education policy. And taking a clue, CBSE has implemented two level of assessment in class 10 board examination, and this two-level assessment will also carry it out in class 12 mathematics paper also by introducing a new subject applied mathematics. The two-level assessment of subjects has been begun by introducing two-level assessment in the subject mathematics, which is considered as the most difficult subject for the students. In the whole process, as Professor Srivastava and Professor Srikanth has rightly said, capacity building of all the stakeholders are very, very essential. Without building up of capacity of the teachers, the school leaders, the practitioners, the process of implementation cannot be successful and succeeded. So, to build the capacity of the stakeholders, CBSE has started hand-holding of its school leaders. CBSE has already released a handbook for principals for the capacity building of principals and school leaders in the process of acquiring high competencies and skill set for teaching learning in the 21st century. So, handbook for principals helps the principals to get an idea on the competency-based education. What are the skill set and capacities required for beginning this kind of education in schools? CBSE has also designated its principals as pedagogical leaders and also directing its schools to develop an annual pedagogical plan, envisions the changes in the teaching learning process and assessment practices, as well as various other healthy practices for the development of the children to be adopted in the teaching learning process in an academic year. So the handbook on 21st century skills is another publication of CBSE, just recently released, and aims at giving, highlighting the importance of 21st century skills to all the stakeholders. Handbook of teachers and students also envisions spreading of message of the importance of teaching learning process and new pedagogical practices, the innovative pedagogy in the classroom, as well as developing child-centered pedagogy that suits every learner, and every learner's progress needs to be assessed as well as tracked down. Two books for the children. One is Cogito and the question book These are all developed for uh, passing on the message of importance of 21st century skills in the children. So the purpose is to develop curiosity and lot of inquisitiveness in the minds of children. Teacher energized manuals term. Teacher energized resource manuals in science and mathematics has been released to help the teachers to connect the learning outcome based education. NCRT's learning outcome document has been adopted by CBSE, and CBSE is in the process of preparing its teachers to transform the pedagogical practices and the classroom practices to achieve the learning outcome envisaged by NCRT. So these books are helping the teachers how to plan their curricular transaction and pedagogical practices to achieve the learning outcome of every learner. So in the learning outcome based teaching and learning, there are 4 steps essentially involved. It enables the teacher to direct their teaching learning in the desired manner and take corrective measures without delay. So the teachers should be able to know what are the strengths and weaknesses, what are the skill set and qualities acquired by the learner, and this knowledge and information should come to the teacher through the formative assessment, that is the assessment for learning mechanism. It ensures enabling conditions to allow each child to learn and progress. So every child should have a place, and child should be at the center stage of the learning process. In that mechanism, there should be partnership between parents, teachers, and the society as a whole, and give a 360-degree feedback mechanism for the progress of the child. And at the right time, interventions for the learning of the child should happen through adequate and formative mechanism of assessment strategies. It will also help the parents to follow the progress of the learner. So parents will also get a clear idea of the level of learning of the child, and a partnership between teacher and parent and the society as a whole with the help of the school management. The quality learning of the learner will be ensured with the new pedagogical strategies and assessment as learning and assessment for learning process. So essentially in the assessment reform process, as envisaged in the national education policy, the assessment practices gives more flexibility in the assessment, be it introduction of semester-based examination or subject selection for assessment. As we have already discussed, there will be complete freedom. There are a lot of options for subject selection so that the learner can choose subject according to his taste and aptitude. Also, the board examination will be made low stake. How it will be made low stake? Instead of depending upon one summative assessment at the year end, it is going to be a continuous process. And in the board examination, the focus will be to assess learning outcomes and core competencies. Multiple models of assessment by combining different types of selective response and constructed response questions will be applied in the assessment strategy. And taking up of capacity building of functionaries in the assessment to align with the reforms will also be undertaken by CBSE, and it is also required at the level of every assessment boards in the country. Psychometric analysis and action research to improve quality of the assessment as well as for taking informed decision for bringing new changes. So this is one area where the country as a whole, the whole system is lacking. More and more research should be brought into the assessment practices, and assessment, the research-based assessment strategies should be implemented in the system so that in the right way, children can be assessed, and it will lead us to competency-based assessment of students. So, for achieving this level of an assessment, the complete school system needs a transformation. So, creating an enabling environment in the schools for ensuring quality upgradation in assessment and pedagogical practices are required. and this should be ensured through school quality assessment framework. So this is also one of the vision of the NEP. NEP has envisioned two quality standard setting parameters. One is state level as well as national level standards setting body, and PAREC, the National Assessment Center. So both are aiming to ensure quality, both in terms of quality standards in the school environment as well as the assessment practices. So the new introduction of the NEP is school examination in grade 3, 5, and 8. So this examination should happen in an uncertain manner. It should help the school system as a whole, the teachers, parents, and the society to help the learner to achieve the learning outcomes. The essential component of school level foundational literacy numeracy achievement goals of this school-based examination is to test achievement of age appropriate basic learning outcomes and application of knowledge in the real life situation. So connecting the learning with real life, that should happen from the very beginning, and gradually it should grow in continuum. So it will be a diagnostic assessment conducted in an uncertain manner. So it should not direct or hijack the education process. It should rather provide feedback to the education system for making corrective interventions as well as development of the process of education of every learner. So it will facilitate all-round development of the students. So at the right time, it should help the system as a diagnostic exercise where the interventions are required, and it should facilitate coming out with the right intervention at the right time. It should help the teachers to guide their instruction and improve students' learning, help students to improve their own learning, so that the process of assessment as learning and assessment for learning should happen through this exercise. So it should help summarize about the quality of students' learning, so that system as a whole will get an idea how the learning process is happening across the institutions. So how CBSE is continuing its process of implementing reforms as envisaged in the new education policy. So there is a very strong recommendation for making school examinations are less sensitive or less important. So board examinations, instead of conducting an year-end board examination, CBSE will be coming out with a different strategy. Board will be conducting examination in two parts, one in all academic and other subjects, and part A or part 1 will comprise of objective type questions, and part B will be a descriptive type questions. And adequate weightage will be given for internal assessment, such as regular periodic assessment through different modes, subject enrichment activities, portfolio, project work, practicals. This will all help process of assessment during the course of curriculum and pedagogical transactions. So board will also implementing semester-based syllabus to facilitate conducting of this examination, and examination will be made simple and low stake. So the result of a course will be decided based on the performance of a child in the internal assessment and the semester or modular examination as well as the annual examination. Naturally, the weightage of board examinations will be spread across the academic year through different processes of assessment. The result of the students will be based on the achievement in the board exams, semester, modular exams, as well as the internal assessment. This is what CBSE is planning for the schools of its affiliated schools. So in the process of transformation, there are big challenges facing. First is the capacity building of teachers, the stakeholders, the school system. The capacity building of test item developers. The competency-based question development is completely new to the teachers of our country. So there needs to be hand-holded and their capacity needs to be developed in that direction. Parental participation and support. There should be a complete support from the side of the society that is required to bring this kind of a transformation. As without the support of parents and society, we cannot move away from the present method of assessment to a innovative assessment or innovative strategy. So parental advocacy is very, very important. All the schools and education systems and boards of assessment needs to develop strategies for understanding as well as developing a progressive mindset in the mindset for the parents. So building system readiness is very important. So system readiness will happen by developing capacity in the education system, in the board of assessments mechanism, the capacity building of teachers, the school leadership, capacity building of key functionaries of examination, the test item developers and evaluators. So as a whole, society should move towards competency-based assessment and competency-based education. That system readiness is very important for this transformation. Thank you.
Yeah. So, thank you, Dr. Joseph. You made a nice presentation and could place a few suggestions also for implementation. And we will be taking a few questions later on. Thank you. So now I would be requesting to Sri Surendra Singh ji, who is a very important stakeholder. He is a practicing teacher. And, we have listened to different reforms and many ways for implementation. But Sri Surendra ji, you are standing at a point where all these reforms and all these things have to reach. तो हम आपको सुनने के लिए बहुत आतुर हैं. श्री सुरेंद्र जी, आपका स्वागत है, प्लीज.
इस कार्यक्रम में सभी सम्मानित एवं विद्वान साथियों को नमस्कार. मैं मानव संसाधन विकास मंत्रालय के प्रति कृतज्ञता ज्ञापित करता हूं कि मुझे परीक्षा एवं मूल्यांकन सुधार जैसे महत्वपूर्ण विषय पर अपने विचार रखने के लिए इतना बड़ा मंच प्रदान किया. शिक्षक पर्व के अवसर पर अपने सभी शिक्षक साथियों को शुभकामनाएं देता हूं और आह्वान करता हूं कि आइए सब संगठित एवं विराट प्रयासों के द्वारा अज्ञानता रूपी अंधकार का सीना चीरकर नव चेतना का संचार करें. परीक्षा एवं मूल्यांकन में व्यापक सुधार होना चाहिए. परीक्षा एवं मूल्यांकन में व्यापक सुधार होना चाहिए. बच्चे इनसे डरे नहीं, कुछ ऐसा उपचार होना चाहिए. करके सीखें, खेलकर सीखें. करके सीखें, खेलकर सीखें और सीखें आनंददायी गतिविधियों से. मस्ती मस्ती में ही जांच परख का भी आधार होना चाहिए. और ये सभी जांच परख के आधार और आनंददायी गतिविधियां नई शिक्षा नीति में शामिल की गई हैं. नाउ कमिंग टू द today's topic, the examination system of our country had remained almost unchanged for many years. More or less, ability of a student is being assessed by pen paper test. Scoring good marks in exams has become the only aim of the student. Most of the society is also responsible for making exams a source of stress. If someone scores good marks in examination, then our society gives him or her a special treatment. The main aim of education is all-round development of the student. Whole education process is designed to attain this development. We have to ensure the inclusion of interest, aptitude, intelligence, and emotions of the students in assessment. Let's have a quick recap about the background. Post-independence, examination-based system was introduced. NP 1968 talked about comprehensive evaluation, including scholastic and non-scholastic aspect. NP 1986 stated that evaluation is an integral part of teaching learning process. Concept of CCE was excellent, but its implementation was tragic. CGE was misinterpreted as periodic test. Tools for assessment were also not defined. Assessment should facilitate the attainment of competencies specified in terms of learning outcomes in a holistic manner. During teaching learning process, let's talk about qualities of good examination assessment. Objectivity, reliability, clarity, and most importantly, it must be stress-free. Let's see what is being done. Summative assessment of literacy, language, and numeracy by asking simple and direct questions. Pen and paper test is mostly used to assess this cognitive domain. What is being ignored? Formative assessment of literacy, language, and numeracy, verbal and listening proficiency, mental development, social skills, emotional development, physical development, conceptual clarity of the content by asking challenging questions. You have to remember the sole purpose of assessment should be learning. Assessment for learning, assessment as learning, and assessment of learning. Assessment for learning. Assessment is an integral part of teaching and learning. It occurs continuously during teaching learning process. This area requires enhancement by including assessment of knowledge, performance skills, interests, attitude, and motivation. It helps a teacher to understand the learning gaps of each child and modify teaching learning strategy as per need of the students. Assessment as learning. It also occurs during teaching learning process. It requires providing opportunities to students to critically assess, reflect, and analyze their own work. It helps in developing students as independent learners. They can find their own strengths and weaknesses. It enhances the child's confidence. And assessment of learning. It is already being done in current evaluation system through term-wise examination. A teacher can also map students' progress with the help of comments written on the notebooks, worksheets, projects, etc. Let's have a look at some of the assessment strategies a teacher can adopt. Observations, interview, self-assessment, peer assessment, group work assessment, portfolio assessment, feedback, authentic assessment, assignment, role play, storytelling, simulation, project work, experimentation, anecdotal records, checklist, rating scales, focus group discussions, written test. Let's start with assessment of individual learning. Written or oral test for creative writing, essay, story, and poem writing, picture composition, experimentation, and individual projects, drawing, and craft work. I'm very excited to show some of the glimpses of activities and assessments which I use during my interaction with my students. Dictation. I use this tool as an essential part of daily teaching. It improves and assesses listening, speaking skills, vocabulary, and minimize spelling errors. We can understand the assessment of individual learning with the help of this amazing handwriting. Can you believe that this is the calligraphy of a 5th class student named Dilkhush? You can see the smiling faces of the students after completing their patterns. Learning and cognitive assessment both are going side by side. Students are weighing their pencils, erasers, and pens, etc. They are enjoying learning by doing activity and are being assessed simultaneously. I keep record of the assessment done in form of portfolio. In this picture, students are learning grammar through activities and enjoying doing so. Oral skills and cognitive domain are being assessed. In the other picture, students are learning through fun activities outside the classroom. Their cognitive domain and psychomotor skills are being assessed. In this picture, a student is prepared for fancy dress competition and showing that all religions convey the same message. In second picture, student is enacting of being a newspaper and showing its importance. Their oral skills, psychomotor skills, and social skills are being assessed. Look at the activity in this video. I worked as key resource person during Nishtha training with participant teachers. You can see learning and assessment of listening, speaking, and psychomotor development in an entertaining manner in this art integrated learning. Let's have a quick look at suggestive activities used for group assessment. Field visits,
सुरेंद्र जी,
yes sir,
आपकी slide is not visible to us.
yes sir, I'm trying.
Can you speak also?
Sir, I'm getting back to the presentation.
सुरेंद्र जी,
Sir,
या तो आप अपने एक्सपीरियंस को ऐसे भी बता सकते हैं, बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग एक्सपीरियंस है आपके.
yes sir.
हाँ,
Let's have a quick for suggestive activities used for assessment of group learning. Field visits, surveys, artwork, model making and rangoli, games like hockey, badminton, volleyball, dance, experiments and projects. Students prepare this hydraulic crane with the help of waste material like syringes, plastic pipes, and part of fan not in use. This project was adjudged as the best in the Journal Science Fair. Even our education director sir praised the concept and presentation by the students. In the other picture, students prepared a working model of solar lamp. That year, 31 students prepared their own solar lamps and used them at their homes for studying. Their process skills and oral skills are being assessed. Students prepared this spray pump with total waste material, and we used this spray pump for watering the plants and spraying for school plants almost 3 years. Students are explaining about solar and lunar eclipse. I request the parents to let their children break the toys so that they might be able to know the principle and scientific fact behind its working. It will develop scientific attitude and take them many steps ahead for making them our future scientists. Life skills are very much important for a child to develop as a confident youth of our nation. In the other picture, students are explaining about evacuation map of the school in presence of education director sir about disaster risk reduction. Students are performing Nukkad Natak and saying no to plastics and developing their oral and social skills. They are awareing the community about the environment. In the other picture, students are enjoying Bharat Bhraman and noting their daily observations about the places they visited. This is an assessment of observation skill and social skills. Student is showing how to give first aid to a person whose hand is fractured to the international delegation visited to our school. In the second pic, you can see the demonstration of putting out fire with the help of fire extinguisher. Assessment of physical development. Marks or grades should be given for everyday physical activities like yoga and physical education session during the assembly. Specific assessment for games and sports should be done. Students are performing yoga on International Yoga Day, and in second pic, students are doing physical exercises in assembly. Now, assessment of verbal proficiency. As we know that all good speakers have a clarity of thought. Verbal tests develop confidence among students. There may be some students who don't have the best writing skills, but they can explain well verbally. Understanding regarding the concept taught can be evaluated by verbal proficiency. For example, a student with clear understanding of water cycle can explain the process in detail and logically. Assessment of verbal proficiency. We can assess the same through poems, speeches, reading stories, newspapers, and role plays, etc. Social skills development. Emotional attachment is very important with the students. I celebrate birthdays of my students by giving them a birthday card and donating 10 rupee note in Dan Peti to help the needy students. After some time, I saw that students themselves started donating a rupee or two on their birthdays. They realized that happiness depends on what you give, not what you get. घटना का जिक्र करना चाहूंगा। यह बात अप्रैल 2016 की है। स्कूल जाते हुए दिल्ली राज्य परिवहन की बस में मेरी 20,000 रुपए की जेब कट गई। मैंने इस संबंध में FIR दर्ज करवाई। यह बात हमारे स्कूल के साथी अध्यापकों के माध्यम से मेरे विद्यार्थियों को पता लग गई। उस वर्ष मेरी कक्षा के 57 में से 56 छात्र अत्यंत प्रतिष्ठित मेधावी छात्रवृत्ति परीक्षा में उत्तीर्ण हुए और उन्होंने दिल्ली नगर निगम शिक्षा के इतिहास में एक नया कीर्तिमान बनाया। इसमें शिक्षा विभाग की ओर से विद्यार्थियों को एक प्रमाण पत्र और 700 रुपए प्रति छात्र की दर से राशि दी जाती थी, जो कि अब 1000 रुपए कर दी गई है। जब मैं उस राशि का वितरण करने लगा तो सभी बच्चों और उनके अभिभावकों ने वो पैसे लेने से यह कहते हुए मना कर दिया कि आपकी जेब कट गई थी, आपका नुकसान हुआ है, उसकी भरपाई कर लीजिए। बड़ी कोशिशों के बाद मैंने समझाकर वो रुपए वितरित किए। समाज के आर्थिक रूप से सबसे कमजोर वर्ग के लोगों द्वारा जो रोज कुआं खोदते हैं और रोज पानी पीते हैं, मेरे प्रति त्याग और समर्पण की इस भावना ने मुझे भाव विभोर कर दिया। मुझे नहीं पता ये बच्चे बड़े होकर राष्ट्र के उत्थान में क्या भूमिका निभाएंगे, परंतु यह तय है कि मेरे बच्चे मानवीय संवेदनाओं से परिपूर्ण अच्छे इंसान जरूर बनेंगे। Rubric is an assessment tool that clearly indicates achievement criteria across all the components of any kind of student's work, from written to oral to visual. I came to know about this tool last year during Nishtha training. Self-assessment. This is an example of self-assessment rubric for students. understanding of factors is shown. First level student thinks that I need some help. At level 2, student thinks that I have a basic understanding. At level 3, students think that my work consistently meets expectations. And at level 4, students think that I have a deeper understanding and I can teach someone else how to do it. Similarly, we can prepare a rubric for peer assessment as well. Aspects of peer assessment: leadership, listening, time management, cooperation, and feedback. Portfolio: it is the purposeful collection of student work that exhibits students' efforts, progress, and achievements in one or more areas. I keep record of every student in the form of portfolio. It is very useful for achieving desired LOs. These are different examples regarding all the subjects. My 323 students cracked merit scholarship exam during the last 10 years. 166 students cleared Rajkiya Pratibha Vikas Vidyalaya entrance exam, and these Vidyalayas are like IITs for 6th class entrance. And 7 students cleared Navodaya Vidyalaya entrance exam. 180 students won prizes in co-curricular and district level and state level competitions during the last 5 years. You can see the same average consistently over a long period of time. Means every student is performing greatly in academic, co-curricular activities and games as well. We are discussing for the assessment reforms for all-round development of the students. Can there be a better example of all-round development of the students? You can see the result of effective learning and assessment in the form of prizes at state level competitions. See the proud and happy faces in this picture. Now, I'm concluding by saying that assessment is certainly a holistic process. One thoughtfully designed task may evaluate a child's language and literacy proficiency while assessing the social and emotional development of the child at the same time. Assessment mustn't be a burden or a matter of fear for a child. All types of assessment must be learning oriented, where children keep on learning and enjoying the assessment tasks given. Thank you.
So, थैंक यू सुरेन जी, ये एक बड़ा अच्छा अनुभव आपने हमारे सामने प्रस्तुत किया। तो अब मैं सोचता हूं कि प्रश्नों की बात मैं आपसे ही शुरू करूं, जिससे कि हम और भी कुछ बिंदुओं को अपने लिसनर्स, अपने हमें देखने वालों के सामने रख सकते हैं। सुरेन जी, आपने जैसा बताया असेसमेंट फॉर लर्निंग के समय कि ये एक नॉलेज, स्किल्स, मोटिवेशन, एप्टीट्यूड को एसेस करता है असेसमेंट फॉर लर्निंग समय, और एक शिक्षक के रूप में आपने कुछ और भी बहुत अच्छे उदाहरण दिए। जैसे आपने एक इमोशनल बॉन्डिंग का एक बहुत अच्छा उदाहरण दिया, आपने एक दिलखुश नामक छात्रा के राइटिंग के बारे में भी बताया। तो मैं आपसे ये जानना चाहता हूँ, 2 बिंदु आपके सामने रखता हूँ कि जो आप एक दिल्ली के आउटर पेरिफेरी में एक सरकारी विद्यालय में जब आप शिक्षक के रूप में जब पहुंचे, तो आपने जरूर कुछ बाधाओं को अनुभव किया होगा, संभवतः, मेरा ये सोचना है, मैं गलत भी हो सकता हूँ। और उन बाधाओं को आपने कैसे दूर किया, और सबसे महत्वपूर्ण बात है कि एक समुदाय को आपने अपने प्रयासों के साथ कैसे जोड़ा, उनका योगदान अगर कुछ रहा तो विद्यालय के क्रियाकलापों में समुदाय को कैसे आपने योगदान उनका प्राप्त किया, इसके बारे में मैं आपसे जानना चाहूँगा। सुरेन जी।
जी सर, sir, I faced many challenges in this particular school. First challenge was the irregularity of the students. I conducted regular PTMs, made the parents aware about the importance of education and explaining the strengths of the children, regularly making a call to the parents of absentee students. When the government teachers make a call, Believe me, the parents become very happy to know that the teacher is conscious about their child. By establishing emotional friendly relations with the students, it's very important to have a close bonding with the students so that they can share their every problem with the teacher. Average attendance of my students remains very high. Another problem was, another challenge was to improve academic proficiency of students. I encouraged the students to ask as many questions like what, why, how, as much they can, because curiosity and knowledge both are directly proportional to each other. As I said earlier in my presentation, I used dictation as a compulsory tool to improve their vocabulary. I collected small stories from newspapers and made a treasure of stories, कहानियों का खजाना, and distributed them among students. Next day, they used to tell stories in the class. और जो सबसे अच्छी कहानी सुनाता था, फिर उसको कोई प्रोत्साहन के रूप में पेन, पेंसिल या कॉपी इनाम के तौर पर दे दी जाती थी. Initiated fun and activity-based learning so that students enjoy spending time in the school. Paired the students, one intelligent and one slow learner student. They communicate and understand each other well, and that's a peer learning. I gave 1 hour extra time for comparatively slow learners. I conducted remedial classes during summer and winter holidays as well. I conducted regular tests. For this, I managed a laptop and a printer to meet this purpose. Provided stationery items to the students without any delay in case of any need of the student. होता सर ये है कि कभी किसी बच्चे के पास कॉपी नहीं होती, वो बच्चा कहता है कि मेरे पापा के पास, मम्मी के पास पैसे नहीं हैं, तो उसे वो तुरंत उपलब्ध करा दी जाती है. A teacher named Vandana, I would like to mention, a teacher named Vandana who has worked in our school donates rupees 50 per month to assist these children. Your second question was, sir, about the community and school management. The school and community are complementary to each other. If the community strives for upliftment of the school, in return, the school also provides the youth with cultural and moral values, who play an important role in building a healthy society and nation. Positive support of the community is essential for the good progress of the school. No one is ready to think randomly for cooperation. We have to prove ourselves. We have to give good results. We need to create a proper, healthy environment for this. Today, the fragrance of miraculous results of the students of our school has spread throughout North Delhi Municipal Corporation. Inviting parents to cultural programs in schools. Parents really enjoy their children performing in the programs. By advertising good results of the RPVV, Merit Scholarship Exam, and many competitions. We became successful by doing that, by motivating the community, and we managed donating LED, UPS, batteries, task force kit, books from time to time, bags, and first aid kit, and many more as per the need of the school. By inviting alumni students, they share their experiences. और मैं अंत में यही कहना चाहूंगा कि डरा नहीं गिरने से जो भी ऊंचा पहुंचा वह उत्साही, दृढ़ कदमों से आरंभ करो, अभिषेक करेगी ऊंचाई. थैंक यू.
And in all this endeavor, the most important stakeholder, that is child, will be benefited. So taking a cue from all these discussions, Professor Shrikant, we were just seeing the example of a school. We all know that creativity and innovation has to be there in the child, and critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, communication, all these traits we look for in the child, and we have to look for in the child. So keeping all this thing in mind, I just want to place a few points before you and would seek your views on that. How 360 assessment would be implemented, because you have an experience of your demonstration multipurpose school also. So what is your take on the immediate actions, or the first and foremost actions, or points that we should take up as a stakeholder in the system? And the second point, that it is related to that, for improving the quality learning, formative assessment is very important. So what the first few points you want to suggest on this occasion to our listeners, practitioners, and all others? Thank you. Please.
Thank you, sir. These are very wonderful questions. And in fact, the NEP has pointed about how 360-degree assessment is important in conducting, to improve the quality and performance of the students. Just for coming out with good learning outcomes, how they can be attained and all that. So let me explain a bit, in the sense, when it comes to 360, though the term has changed, but basically earlier we used to discuss about all-round assessment of all-round abilities of the students. So we know that the students have divergent abilities. Each student has divergent abilities, and each student has to be assessed in different dimensions under the same curriculum. So both aspects have to be dealt with. There is a creative element, and also there is an element which is common to all students. So both the aspects have to be assessed. Unlike the paper pencil test, which can only assess the limited abilities, in fact, like Mr. Surenderji was saying, that dictation is being used. So, and we want to see their handwriting. So these can be seen directly, observed directly, and they cannot be seen from the point of view of only scores or marks, because marks may mean anything. Unless we see, feel, sense about these things, it will not be very useful to the students. So for that reason, we have to use different tools and techniques. And in fact, in addition to what you have asked, there was also a question in the chat box that, there are, especially assessment for learning and assessment as learning, these are very difficult to be conducted in the school. I have apprehensions if people feel like that. It is not necessary that every assessment has to be conducted 5 times, 10 times like that. A project can be conducted, one single project, which involves multidisciplinary subjects, and a collaborative project is sufficient in a year. In fact, I say that one good project in a lifetime is sufficient, because we understand how project is prepared collaboratively, what are the various stages, and how each one can contribute, and what we learn from each stage, etc. So this will also give us an understanding of different disciplines or subjects. So that way, it is not the number, it is the quality that we are expecting. And when we have different aspects of assessment, so then it will provide more and more opportunities. Formative feedback, it is important. The reason, because it provides qualitative inputs. If somebody is, let us say handwriting, if handwriting of the child is not good, can marks help in that? No. The student has to be given how that handwriting is not so good, and how he or she can improve, etc. So there are various other things, like even in the case of dance, music, art forms. So many other aspects can be assessed through observation, active and direct feedback to the students, rather than providing feedback in the form of marks or grades. So that is why formative feedback is important, and the all-round development can be assessed, which the NEP calls as 360-degree assessment. So these are very important. Certainly, they will take us to the next level. Thank you.
Oh, so good. So we listened to the views of Professor Shrikant. Now moving further, I would request Dr. Joseph. Dr. Joseph, you see that CBSE, as one can say, is the most premier board, national board, and the other boards looks towards CBSE. And the most important point is that CBSE has many system and functioning processes in place already. So, as you mentioned about your capacity building centers also, so a few points that how you look towards a plan for pushing all these examination reforms, and it should reach to all schools, primarily CBSE schools, and other will look towards you all for all this plan for implementation. So what's your take on that? And most importantly, given this national education policy before us and its points of recommendations and all, how you feel that we can make this board examination low stake? Students should not be stressed. And what is your plan for that? Your point, please. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. For implementation of the national education policy, CBSE has planned for three-level intervention at with the schools. One is advocacy program, which is teachers and the school management and the community as a whole. Then secondly, capacity building of teachers. Teachers being the very important stakeholders in this process, without building up of their capacity, assessment for learning, assessment as learning, all kind of evaluation process, which is helping the child to transform as a competent individual will not happen. Again, there will be a lot of resistance from the teachers as they will be struggling how to implement this strategy of assessment in the classroom. Professor Srikanth and Surendraji, they both from their practical experience, very categorically stated that it is the mindset change and application of that what we propagate in theory in the practical field that will transform the classroom transaction. So the capacity building of teachers to apply innovative strategies like art integrated learning, sports integrated learning, experiential learning, project-based learning or the portfolio-based learning, all those elements into the classroom. For that, they need huge capacity building. That is one area. As a board of assessment, CBSE is planning to invest in. Another important aspect is change in the assessment practices. So at present, the whole focus is on year-end examination, and that focus on the year-end examination should be distributed across the year, and its stake should be brought down. So at present, it's a high-stake examination, and the mark scored by a candidate at the year-end examination will decide his further career progress. So from that stage, first of all, a strategy should be developed to make it as a low-stake examination. How can you make it low-stake examination? If NEP is giving a clear idea to spread the assessment practices across the year. There will be modular examination, there will be semester examination, there will be internal assessment. So a multiple modes of assessment spreading across the year will be implemented so that the high-stake nature of board examination will be brought down to low-stake examination, and the result of a child will be given based on the realistic assessment. So year-long assessment is the real assessment. Everyday performance of the child can be observed and recorded, and it can be used not only for developing a progress card that can be useful for his further career growth. At the same time, it should help the stakeholders, the teachers, the parents, and the society as a whole to take corrective measures. So at the right time, right intervention, wherever the child is lacking, whether the child is performing according to his skill set and abilities and aptitude. That can be identified during the course of teaching and learning, and this should be properly assessed and recorded. And in this process, automatically, weightage of marks given at the year-end examination will be staggered across the year-long activities, and it will be brought down as a lost rate activity. Secondly,
Please. Go ahead.
Secondly, for implementing the whole exercise, huge capacity building is required. So that is why CBSE has already established a center of excellence across the country. There are 16 center of excellences spread and co-located with the 16 regional offices of CBSE. Each center of excellence or the teachers training centers will focus on the capacity building of teachers, the capacity building of HM developers, and in this process, slowly and steadily, the transformation should happen on the ground. The school should be able to take on the new ways of assessment, and they should also come across with the innovative way of teaching and learning. All those pedagogical practices which are encouraged. So innovative pedagogical practices such as art integrated learning, sports integrated learning, experiential learning, project-based learning, all those should become part of the regular schooling. And accordingly, the capacity building of the teachers is very, very important to achieve this target. So when the teachers develop these competencies and capacities to transact this kind of innovative pedagogy in the classroom, another area that needs to be looked upon is development of a framework for assessment. How to assess a child scientifically, by highlighting what are his potential, knowledge level, his skill set, aptitude, talent. So what we are thinking, all round development, everything should come out through the assessment strategies. So that kind of a competency level for bringing new methods of assessment needs to be developed in the teachers or the practitioners. That is the second challenge we are facing. For this, very collaborative effort, among the schools itself, CBSE is planning. CBSE has already formed, hubs of learning, under the leadership of a well-performing school, and 4 or 5 schools in the locality is attached to that hub as a collaborator school. So there will be a lead collaborator and the collaborator schools. So best practices among the schools can be shared, and handholding can be done by mutual help. So this is one way of developing capacity, and direct intervention from the board is also being planned. By multiple ways of intervention, capacity building will happen with the stakeholders, the school system, and the school quality assessment and assurance framework that will ultimately help the schools to identify their strengths and weaknesses and come out with a plan to overcome the limitations in the schooling system. So with a collaborative effort, capacity building should happen, and society as a whole should accept and understand the need for transformation in the pedagogical practices as well as assessment system, and appreciate the fact that this kind of reforms will harness the potential and the skill set of the students, and they will become successful individuals when they become when they grow old and they face real challenges of life.
So thank you, Dr. Joseph. So I really feel very much benefited, and we all feel very much benefited from all these discussions. And we listen to experts, Professor Srikanth and Dr. Joseph, and most importantly, we listen to an awarded teacher who is there in government school on the periphery of Delhi, and where we today listen about the collaborative effort, peer sharing, peer support, and how to connect community with the schools and efforts of the teacher, and particularly for me, it was very heartening to listen to when Suren Singh mentioned about the Nistha training, because as a teacher, he is referring that, and while mentioning about rubric, he mentioned about Nistha. So we are very happy that things and efforts made by governments and institutions are reaching to the targeted place. I just would like to recall that Honorable Prime Minister mentioned that this national education policy, it's not merely a policy document, it is a document of the whole nation, or this 130 crore population. So friends, I am quite hopeful, and we all must be hopeful that we are going to see our tomorrow better than today, so far as the assessment in the school system is concerned. With these words, I again thank you all to the speakers and the listeners and the other persons who are connected in this program. And I am really very thankful to the Minister of Education for conducting this program and giving me opportunity to just moderate over here. Thank you all. Namaskar. Namaskar.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Namaskar.
Yeah.
थोड़ा सा सैनिटाइजर दे दो सबको।
जिसमें और भी फोल्डर थे, खाली आपने शिक्षक वाला नहीं,
वन
एक शिक्षक।